So Haley says hello, by the way.
Well, hello, Haley. God bless.
We sent you we texted you a picture of Dresden
Wonderful.
to your
Where's
phone,
it from? Dresden?
Dresden,
Yeah.
and so you can use that picture if you want for this.
Okay. That's very good.
Okay.
I just thought that we would, since we're talking about the elite, this is a great show, the coffee mug ceremony, right? We're dealing with the elite here. I don't know if you can see that on that camera. Anyway, okay, Michael, what about this thing about the streets of London? Super soldiers in the British Isles in the UK. What's happening there?
Well, we've been talking about things in more general terms. I'd like to get a bit more specific regarding the operations that I was involved in over the last few years.
Yeah.
We didn't really have time to go into in Bases 9. Talk about one.
Well, I think at the end of Basis 9, you were talking about an alien war, that if you see a big, a ridiculous situation with when you got one car has been hit and they close 4 lanes of a motorway and half the place is covered in things, that's a signature of some alien war happening.
That's
But
true.
you ended part 3 there by saying basically they've had it. They're just going to let the public see it, because
Basically,
so that implies that we're losing whatever's going on.
Well, I'll talk about what is going on. March 2011 is where the super soldiers, or these cyborgs, are involved in so many different levels of operation, different areas, different countries. I was sent in to monitor one of the biggest drug dealers in London, 2011.
I mean, that's going back to your old job of helping the cocaine, as Annie, your close friend Anya Briggs calls it, the cocaine importing agency.
Well, we've always been used to enforce the drug trade because we have to control that to fund the black projects, essentially.
Yeah, that's a fairly logical thing.
So, 2011, I was sent in to monitor one of the biggest drug dealers in London, this black guy, and followed him to a motorway services,
Is this on near Fleet?
just on the outside, just outskirts of London, and followed him.
M3 or M11 or?
I'd rather not say where it was because of his ultimate fate. And followed him into lavatory, and we just listening to what he was saying and just getting a general impression of the guy. And he's in the cubicle on the phone to people on his mobile phone, ringing up other drug dealers, threatening them to come around their houses and shoot them if they didn't go out and start selling enough crack on the streets. So the guy was a real scumbag, and he trailed him to South London where he lived, and then around the Brixton area, and I went back to I forget the name of it now. I'm getting like a real mind block. The nice area of London near Kensington Palace.
Yeah, Richmond. Oh God, no, I've got the. Yeah, we know where it is.
Near Hyde Park.
Yeah, near Hyde Park. Yeah.
I spent so much time there. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of the place.
Yeah, yeah. We know the area near Hyde Park.
Hyde Park. Okay. And,
Chelsea, is it? No.
No, not Chelsea.
Jesus.
Not
Anyway,
Kensington.
near Hyde Park. That'll be.
Okay, near Hyde Park. See, so I'm there, and I'm staying at a very nice hotel there. And then one night I'm called out for an operation. Walk up to Hyde Park, and just in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt to look like I'm going for a jog. And there's police on the corner there, just near Buckingham Palace, and there's a group of police on the corner near Hyde Park, so with a van. And they stop me and speak to me, and I get in the van, and it's actually SAS, disguised as police.
Yeah.
And I'm given a briefcase full of money. And I'm just given a commando knife, double-sided stiletto knife. And I'm supposed to meet the guy in the park to buy drugs. And he's there with his bodyguard. And I take the money, I take the knife, and I go in to the park. And he's there, he's waiting in the park with the bodyguard, this big other tall black guy. And as we're exchanging the drugs and the money, I pulled a knife out and stabbed them both to death in the park. And
What sort of time of day was this?
this was at night.
Okay.
Must have been 10 or 11 at night. And this was in March 2011. And the bodyguard, tall guy, managed to get off a punch before he died, and punched me in the face. And he went back to the hotel, Haley, with a big lump across my nose. And
That was careless, Michael.
and then as I walked off, as I was getting out the park, I heard a lot of shouting and screaming from the area where the stabbing had just taken place. And that was, I think some people had discovered the bodies. But it was a knife it was just a British commando knife, a double-sided blade.
Yeah.
It was just to send a message because, shooting people is too easy. So this sent a message to the black drug community.
So this is you're taking credit for that hit then.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be happy about that, are they? Or they already know. I mean, in terms of having any redress.
It's irrelevant. The intelligence services has been doing this in London and America since the 80s and 90s.
Right. Yeah.
They would flood MI5 would use ex-SAS and ex-Special Forces, and they would flood even more drugs and guns into South London. So drug wars would explode onto the streets.
In other words, it would dilute the currency.
Well, when the drug wars exploded onto the streets, there was a lot of them in the 80s in Brixton, and the drug lords would expose themselves then. And then
they didn't know who they were really dealing with.
Well, yeah, the main players would come out the woodwork, and the SAS would simply go to their houses, go to their bars, go to their clubs, and shoot them in the face. And that was the MO then, and it was always put down to rival drug factions and never investigated.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, that's interesting because Marie Kayali, her in the East End, her sister, there was a black raid on their house, and that seemed to be completely ignored by the police. Is that sort of because it was part of that kind of an operation? I mean, I don't want to quote or deal with that particular kind of case really, but when the police ignore a lot of violence, or because a gang is doing something, is that because basically a particular gang or people posing as a gang are actually doing an MO?
I think a lot of these people work with the police and the intelligence services. You can't. The intelligence services control the black gangs in South London and in London. So if anybody gets out of line, they're murdered.
In other words, they don't like freelance activity.
It has to be controlled. It's ultimately the Fourth Reich. They control the drug trade, and the way they view blacks, especially, they're definitely not going to let any of them get out of line.
So this is a way of effectively policing, of maintaining order and control. Effectively, I mean, it's a logical battle strategy.
I mean, it's order out of chaos. But this particular drug dealer, he was going very much rogue, where he thought he could just do what he wanted, and that's why we didn't shoot him. That's why it had to be a stabbing to send a message.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That's a sort of establishing your background in recent years, and then you then went to the States. I mean, what's the next stage? Or do you
Uh,
want to talk about your operations in the States, or do you want
it's
to?
just it's little things like that lead to bigger things in different countries. They're using these soldiers to enforce all the governments to just create one government.
I mean,
And
that seemed to be very clear with the way that in the last year, a whole pile of governments in the Middle East have just fallen one, two, three, four, five. I mean, there mustn't be too many left. There's the Iranian situation
yeah,
and South Korea, and North Korea.
well, the whole thing in the Middle East is about to wind down now. The focus is going to be on America. Even incidents that happened in Britain relate to what's happening in America now. In Truro in Cornwall, this was January 2010. I was training with the British Army. Even though I wasn't enlisted with them, I was still training with them. I was on like an entry training program with them. And I sent you some documentation from the army,
Yeah.
the British Army, and just the small amounts of training I did, they got everything they could out of me. Whereas one particular night, we travelled up in vans from the army base there, the infantry base in Truro,
Yeah.
under the cover of just going to some naval bases in Plymouth, just for some training. And we were driving through, there's a big forest as you enter Plymouth. And we're driving through the forest and we did the training and then come back. And as we were in the middle of the forest, it was dark now, it was at night, a huge fire broke out to the left of us in the woods. And we drove around the corner, there was a roadblock there. They blocked the road off with vans. And a black van pulled up next to us, a TR3 was above us. The guys in the black van got out dressed in black uniforms with masks on. And they got me and another soldier out of the van. And they took us down into the woods off the road near where the fire was, and there was a tent set up there. And there were soldiers inside the tent. And to the left, there was a saucer-shaped craft that crashed with his nose embedded in the dirt there. And there was all bits of metal had smashed off the craft when it had crashed and was on fire all around the forest.
Was this a shoot down of that craft, or was it an accident?
I don't know. It had come down. It'd probably been shot down. Most of them are. And some soldiers were carrying two bodies out of the craft back to the tent. They look like two small reptilians with long claws on the hands, but small, like grey type height, maybe had 4 or 5 feet. And they were taking those back to the tent. And my job was I had to stay in the tent afterwards, and I had to psychically scan every member of personnel who was involved in the operation before they could leave.
Are you saying that that's because they could have been, shall we say, something could have taken hold of them? Walked in?
The craft is sometimes booby trapped, and if you touch them, you can be, I don't know, taken over, taken control of. I don't fully understand.
In other words, the essence of the beings would leave, and then they'd walk in.
I expect, yeah, that sounds quite accurate.
I mean, I think Anya mentioned something like that, where she was used as a vessel to hold on to the essence of some bit of some certain people in her.
Yeah.
In other words, you need a coherent living brain as a temporary dump, as a temporary store. Is that right?
That's correct. And so if I think some soldiers had touched the hull of the craft and been compromised. So everybody, I scanned everybody else, but 2 in particular had been compromised. So they were taken away. And then we
what happens to them? How are they uncompromised?
I'm not sure. They go through a big debriefing process.
What does a debriefing process involve? Lots of questions, or do they have their
it's almost like a form of Dianetics in Scientology, where they're taking the person back and getting them to uncover things. And I think they're essentially trying to work out if they're the original person or if they're now an alien in human form. Because if they take them back and far enough, they'll realize that, it gets to, say, 1979, the person on fire, the person was supposed to live in Glasgow, but he's got memories of living on a ship or living on another planet.
Yeah.
So that suggests to the army, okay, this person has touched the hull and been taken over or been completely swapped.
Oh, they would swap?
Possibly, could possibly disintegrate
yeah,
the person.
yeah.
And then a new being appear in their place. Because the aliens are smart. They'll send ships close to army bases knowing they'll be shot down, and then they'll just be booby trapped.
And then they infiltrate that way.
Yeah, they'll sacrifice the people, the beings on board, and then they'll infiltrate that way, exactly, because they're smart. They're coming in so many different ways.
Now, how do we identify that? Is there any kind of scan? I mean, you're using that. There mustn't be any. In other words, there isn't a thing you can hold up and check. You can't sort of check with the eyes or anything. You've got to do a personality profile scan.
I mean, I was just doing the initial quick time scan. And then I was using the technology inside my body too. But once people identified as possibly being compromised, they're taken away for extended debriefings.
But if they've been completely compromised, it's lights out, isn't it? Really?
I don't know what happens to them. It's probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're probably put in one of these prisons where they store aliens.
Where are the prisons?
There's off planet and on planet.
How does all this? Okay, we're mentioning the off planet stuff. What's the basic difference between off world and off planet?
Well, I think it's just other planets and other moons and things. I mean, they have I think they have one alien prison at Kirtland Air Force Base underground. I think it's called Blue Moon, codenamed. So there's definitely a lot of interaction with them. And then to carry on, after we were put back on the bus, we carried on and we drove out of the forest on the outskirts of Plymouth. And if you're driving along the motorway there's a Peugeot car dealership on the left as you're going from Plymouth to Truro. It's on a roundabout there. And another fire broke out near the roundabout to the right of us this time. Second fire in the same night. We drove round to there. We were taken out. I was taken out. And there was another crashed disc-shaped craft. But this had like see-through kind of bubble on top. And there was all humans trapped inside. It was on fire. And they were burning to death inside. They couldn't get out.
So this was a human craft, or did they have human-looking ETs?
Well, there was people inside, and there was the craft, the round circular craft with like a glass bubble on top, and the people were inside that section, but it was on fire, and they couldn't get out, and they were slamming on the glass. But this was January. This was around January, February 2010. It was just near the Peugeot dealership. You go from, like, say, Plymouth to Truro. And this was operations with the British Army, the infantry there. And then from there...
I take it they didn't get out, they didn't survive.
I can't remember what happened. I just remember being taken there and they were all on fire.
But there wasn't any compromised people there as well, or infantry?
There was a seal-off crew. The people, the craft was on fire on the inside. But I think we just stood there and didn't even do anything. We weren't trying to rescue them.
I suppose once you're half burnt, you might as well finish the job.
I don't know. I just remember the details. I don't remember all the... And then when I dropped back at Penzance, was it Truro or Penzance? No, it was Penzance. And then I ended up missing the last bus. I had to walk back from Penzance to St Ives late at night.
That's a bit of a walk. You mean they can't even leave you home?
No, they just dropped me off there, and then I had to walk miles in the dark, and there was more roads sealed off on the walk with like vans and stuff. And I remember being taken into the vans and debriefing in the vans.
Is that because they deliberately left you off to be picked up by the vans?
Well, the people in the vans wanted to know what had happened with the two operations. With the two crashes.
Is that because of the sort of compartmentalization of intelligence? So one lot don't really know what the other lot's going, so they
I think that's you're exactly accurate there. I think that's exactly what they wanted to do. Different factions.
Have you heard of trading vans? MOD's trading vans. They'd use psychics in there to find out things.
Do they have like the little antennas on top, and they have the psychic in the van transmitting psychic energy out the
I
antenna?
don't know the details of the van.
I've heard of that, but
I mean, it seems that some of our sources, I mean, the National Health Service seems to be full of people who are want to take out psychically aware people. Is there any kind of
uh,
problem between the services about that?
I'm not sure. I think they're definitely trying to recruit all the psychics and all that, but I mean, psychics are just—they're not so much sought after these days. They're looking. They've made the psychic powers. They've kind of weaponized it with technology now. So now they're looking for the physical abilities. With the psychic powers are kind of controlled through hardware in the body now. So instead, for example, whereas you might have a remote viewer trying to remote view a politician in a different state, and they might say, okay, he's sitting in his kitchen with his little dog, but he's wearing a green jumper. But really, he is sitting in his kitchen with his little dog, but he's wearing a blue jumper. So they're getting accurate readings, but they're making little mistakes. But now they'll do it with a psychic will be connected through satellite to a cranial implant, so they'll physically be able to see. There's no room for error anymore.
So what about these? What about the technologies and the satellites, or as some people call it, synthetic telepathy or synthesized enhanced sensory
Well,
devices?
the NSA are using a lot of satellites, but they're very important, the satellites, but they do so much. They can manipulate time. Whereas,
How do they? Yeah,
well, what they can do is they can freeze time in one area and let time run normally in a different area close by. For example, when I was at Fort Sam, in the morning we get up at like 4 in the morning, and then we go and do physical training in a field near the barracks. And there would be my company training with 300 soldiers.
yeah.
Nearby, there might be a different company with another 300 soldiers jogging along the road. Now, one company would all have blue belts around their waists, and then the other company, my company was Bravo company, you might have Foxtrot company with all red belts.
Yeah.
So you identify different companies. Now, I'm training with Bravo company, the blue belts in the field. People see me at the same time when I'm in the field, or supposed to be in the field. They see me running in the middle of Foxtrot company, the only person out of about 300 people with a blue belt on, running in the middle of a group with all red belts on. And people are like, how are you able to be joining the group, joining a separate group when you're training here? And how is it nobody's stopping you and saying, why are you wearing a different colored belt? So basically, what they're
But only
doing,
only the same people would know that. So the other people wouldn't see anything odd, unless they knew that you were definitely somewhere else.
but people in other companies saw Foxtrot running past, but with me in the middle running with them with a different colored belt on. And they saw, and I'm supposed to be training with Bravo company in the field. So what they're basically doing is they're freezing time on the field, so everybody's frozen in time, but yet I can still move. I'm the only person who can move around. And so I'm walking off the field, and I'm joining Foxtrot company running past, run into the middle of their group and go for a run with them. While so Foxtrot is moving, but Bravo company is frozen in time. So I
Now,
go for
is that an experiment, or just to see what you can do, or
Well, they've been able to do this since I think World War II. But imagine the military applications for that.
I mean, this is where a lot of abductions happen. You know, time seems to freeze for people.
But we're talking about normal soldiers now in the army. This technology, it was not even alien abductions. Just in the middle of a base at 5 a.m. in the morning, the technology is being used there. So then I'm running with Foxtrot, and then I finish the run, but people don't see me in Foxtrot because I've got the separate belt, and it's only people who we run past saw me in the middle of Foxtrot. Then I've gone back to the field with Bravo Company, who are still frozen, and time has started up again, and I carry on training with them. Nobody in Bravo has missed me.
So how does that, I keep on asking, how does that work? I mean, where could somebody find this information to be able to investigate or research it to give it verification?
I think I'm the only person talking about a lot of this stuff because I'm experiencing it firsthand.
Well, how do people, how do you actually lead people along on this? How do you actually make what this whole thing? I mean, basis 23, all the whole thing. How do you actually lead people along to actually say yes, this is true, or you're just a disinfo agent spreading science fiction with a little bit of what? I mean, what's the point of all that ultimately?
Well, I mean, I would ask the question to you, Miles. What is the point of to do the Basis series?
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
are you trying to help people? Are you trying to save the masses?
Well, I'm trying to find out what's going on because I would like humanity to live in a better place,
Well, that's very noble of
and
you.
I don't like deception if can be avoided. There's good reasons for deception, but what ultimately I just want to find out what's going on. If there is an abuse of technology and people are suffering, is that not a bad thing?
Well, I mean, what is abuse? Is one racist survival, fighting for survival? I mean, if they're going to war with other races, you could say they're abusing other races, but it's survival of the fittest.
Yeah. So ultimately, the end game is like all life. You know, what one's got to survive.
Exactly. And sometimes,
I think
well,
every species has got the right to try and survive.
yeah, every species has a right to try and survive,
Yeah.
but weaker species will naturally not survive as time goes on.
So, in summary, uh, what are we really dealing with here? We got a lot of aliens. We got off-planet mining operations using super soldiers fighting giant spiders. You've just completed a tour of duty, as I understand it, with the U.S. military. You're no longer in the U.S. military, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So essentially, you were a guest of the U.S. military, or you were like you were a lot of people. You were training. I mean, RAF people will go over and they'll train Top Gun and stuff like that. So this is part of a normal program where people would train. I'm sure there's. So what were you training for? What's your next step? Where does Michael Prince, aka James Casbolt, go from here?
My essentially, I was supposed to do over 180 days of active duty service for the US military, which I completed. Then I'll be qualified to take my next step to go into my next job once I completed the 180 days.
And so that will obviously be in the future at some period of time.
That's correct. I can just take it easy now for a while.
You're on maternity leave or paternity leave or what do you call that?
Kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
You could put it that way.
yeah. And so ultimately, ultimately, what the goal is essentially to bring these two bloodlines together.
Hmm.
They've, in summary, they've had a war.
Hmm.
What was the cause of the war? I mean,
They're both very powerful. They're almost too powerful to neutralize each other. So this could go on endlessly.
so it's
So coming to the point where they've taken like a prince and princess from each bloodline and married them off,
which happens.
which happens in wars and different tribes when they go to war. And they've it, it's going to change everything now because they're going to be so much more effective coming together.
And that is ultimately the goal. You have a marriage of two families. I think
Uh,
that's what I sort of suggested in part one about the dowry. What's the exchange going to be? What's the prize?
well, the the offspring is going to be a new type of being, like first of a kind.
And that's why the next generation. I mean, these new humans that are being born with the different DNA, the black goo, is the black goo at all true? Is it anything and in your knowledge base?
I would say it's true. I think it's connected to these worms. Um, I mean the
There are some observers who've seen worm-type black things at the Harwell labs.
But I think this connects to cybernetics. If you have the two bloodlines coming together, the Jewish side, like I say, is a reptilian shapeshifter, which looks human and is actually reptilian, disguised like a chameleon. Now there's cybernetics involved, but there's a lot of it's a lot of flesh and blood. But the other side, the Odinist bloodline, it's a cyborg reptilian bloodline. You have it's a what's known as a chameleon class exoskeleton. It's actually a reptilian skeleton with human flesh growing over the top. So essentially it's reptilian, but it looks human. It has human flesh growing over the top. And they have two robotic cybernetic hearts, one on each side, like pumps. Um, they have they don't have any organs. It's a cybernetic digestive system. Weaponry built into the arms, weaponry built into the skull. Um, the bone is pretty much unbreakable because it's created with cold fusion, this material from the ice moon of Saturn. And the skin has like a mesh in it. It's nanotechnology. It's almost like bulletproof skin. Because when I left the barracks of Fort Sam, somebody had left an article outside my door pinned up on the wall about it was a Japanese and American scientist that come together to create a new nano layer, new nanomaterial.
Is that what Anya was talking about? Some
Well,
new
it sounded similar to what Anya was talking about, and someone had left it on my wall outside my door, and it was very thin. It was like super thin plastic, and they'd been photographed. They'd shot bullets into it, and the bullets had just lodged into the material. Now you see, they've incorporated that.
Is that
And
sort of an organic material? It grows, or is it?
yeah, it's like a sort of kind of organic plastic, and because the cyborg technology is very hybrid. It's living metal. There can be such a thing.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
living types of plastic, where they have a dual nervous system too. So this is a tiny material that can be weaved into the flesh, which can make essentially bulletproof flesh with the on top of the unbreakable bone, with able to generate force fields from the flesh itself. So that's three layers of protection right there.
But the infrastructure has to be able to hold that and deal with the forces and the torques and the absorption.
And that's where the exoskeleton
I
comes
mean,
in.
you can improve one part of a system, but you've got to have the whole thing in balance. Otherwise, you can have great muscles, but the bones break.
Exactly, exactly. And so they built the cyborg kind of one stage at a time. They haven't just created it all in one go. It's evolved, and DARPA scientists have been involved since 1812 in France, building this. That's when it started.
So
And now
how
it's
does how do you retain control of these beings? I mean,
well, the on Project Camelot a few years back, the very controversial Heather material was released about a female scientist claimed to work on cyborgs facility in Florida, an underground Air Force base in Florida. Now, she said that there either be the greatest gift given to humanity or humanity's worst nightmare. Now,
Is this anything to do with like the Swedish sisters which appeared on the so-called BBC program Madness in the Fast Lane?
I'd say that's connected because the cyborgs have become autonomous now. Nobody can control them. So they have,
Do we have sort of like a Blade Runner situation?
and they can't be stopped. They can't be policed. So now we're having a situation where the leaders are moving into a transhuman world, and it's the lesser species are kind of being left behind.
How do they reproduce? How do they maintain their integrity? Nothing lasts forever.
Can reproduce.
How do they do that?
Well, the females have types of wombs, and they have functional genitalia. So they can reproduce, but the process to create the exoskeleton is created with a process of cold fusion, where they have living bone marrow inside the alloy bones. It's a special type of bone marrow. It's almost like liquid lava, or it's extremely
Sorry,
hot.
a liquid lava or larva?
You would say lava, so like molten lava,
Yeah.
and
As opposed to larvae of cells.
like a volcano, extremely hot liquid, and that is constantly regenerating. You see, the reason a human being shouldn't age, a human being should essentially live forever. The reason why they age, which they shouldn't, because it's an unnatural process, is because their bone marrow dries up. That's what causes aging, the bone marrow to dry up. But with these beings, the bone marrow is like this liquid lava, is constantly regenerating itself, so it doesn't ever dry up. And
Would that not make them a bit hot?
well, this is the thing. The bone marrow is extremely hot, but the metal is cold fusion, is extremely cold because it's been encased in this ice for so many millions of years on the moon. The metal is a black colored metal which keeps its extremely cold temperature. So what you have is you have extremely hot temperature mixed with extremely cold temperature. You have them constantly fused together. This is creating a third energy, which is vril.
The Vril energy.
The vril is a mixture of extreme hot and extreme cold. Now, in Norse mythology, it states that the energy of life is created in the gap between fire and ice.
Right. That would be for later research.
And there was a book about the Brotherhood of Saturn, which is the Fourth Reich, called Fire and Ice. For that exact reason.
What about the ring makers of Saturn? There was a great book talking about the vast craft scooping up stuff. The ring makers of Saturn and the Saturnian Society. I mean, this is why the Apollo spacecraft, this launch vehicle, was Saturn.
Well, the Fourth Reich is the Brotherhood of Saturn, is the Saturnian Society. The Fourth Reich have been based on Saturn. It's their posting station from Aldebaran. They've been based there. And
these craft that we're seeing, are they Nazis, basically Nazi spacecraft? Is that what?
A lot of them are.
Or is Nazi a wrong term? I mean, the Fourth Reich stuff.
Um,
In other words, these craft, how do you know which ones to shoot down? Who's shooting them down? And which ones are good, bad? Why are they not shot down? Why are others not shot down and some other shot down?
Well, I think that's a complicated question. I think they have sealed off areas around certain bases and certain areas. And if anything comes on to the area, it's going to be shot down.
Yeah.
So, and like I say, it all gets back to the Brotherhood of Saturn, which is the Fourth Reich. That's where they're based, on Saturn.
So I just have to say, finally, as we're getting close to midnight here, so we're going to... what ultimately is... how is the rest of the Earth, the civilizations on the Earth, going to deal with this problem that they're not going to be included in the next situation?
Well, I mean, there's a hierarchy of survival. Um,
I mean, are we looking now at impending false flag nuclear action in the
yeah,
United States?
yeah. I mean, if people look at this video and say, and look at these subject matters and are like, oh, this, and they can't comprehend it and would say this is nonsense, then that's a good indication they're not going to survive because they just simply don't have the DNA to be fit enough to exist into the future
In other words, they're not recognizing things that they should already know.
for their own survival
Yeah,
dynamic. They
yeah.
don't have high enough survival dynamics because they don't have high enough intelligence. It's a simple but
So
hard fact,
essentially, you've been told if you don't take it on board, go suck eggs.
basically. Basically. And it's going to be a whole new religion.
Is
So
this
going to
is
be
this to keep the remaining masses sort of obedient?
well, it's going to be a whole new Luciferian religion. The motto will be "Hail Satan," because the Fourth Reich is Saturn, is based on Saturn. Saturn is Satan. So you're going to have the embodiment of somebody's going to come forward at some point, and then they're going to something in some stage event in Israel. They're going to say we've got the Messiah has returned, and it's Lucifer. And this is the whole new religion is going to be Hail Satan. And the whole Fourth Reich based on Saturn. Saturn is Satan. The Ibis program with Thoth. They're a hierarchy. Thoth, Lucifer, Satan. Belial, they're a hierarchy of demonic entities. Or
And are they going to be in their true form, as opposed to this human mask which people seem to have?
I
I mean,
think
I don't understand why we have everybody shape-shifting to be a human if they're actually something else.
I think they're going to show their true face. And it's going to be, communism, equal opportunity. Oh, because we've allowed blacks into the white society, because we've accepted homosexuals into white society. Oh, you have to accept aliens, reptilians. You can't be racist to them. You have to
Yeah, I mean,
accept
this is a clue, one of the clues about human rights and animal rights.
yeah.
Human
It's-
rights are for the humans,
mm.
but that implies there's already another elite or another group which.
But it's a form of communism, the Zionist communism agenda, equal opportunity, EO, whereas everybody's equal, everybody's the same, nobody's superior, which is ridiculous. Some beings are more superior than others.
Yeah.
And like I say, they indoctrinate everybody to think everybody is equal. So you have to accept the Jews, you have to accept the blacks, you have to accept the homosexuals. If you say anything out, if you
I mean,
speak,
there's probably quite a few laws where I don't know whether we're breaking those or not, because it could be accused of stirring up race hate here. I mean, what do you say about that?
well, is it you want your own race to survive? There's that's a healthy thing. There's a plan to exterminate the white race by the Jews.
But if
And
the Jews are going to be part of are uniting with the Jews are reptilians, and they're going to. You've got this marriage. Surely that plan is out of date then.
Yeah, but it's slightly changed, but it's still embedded in British and American society. Everybody's equal. You have to accept different races into your midst. So then, when the reptilians show up, they're already here. But when they show themselves, they'll be like, you have to accept them into your midst, into your communities, or else you're a racist.
So essentially, this sets the stage for an alien invasion.
Exactly. Equal opportunity and acceptance of race mixing sets you up for extinction. Sets the white race up for extinction, the Aryan race.
Well, on that comforting note, is there anything finally you want you want to say as we close Bases 23?
I think I've got most of the data out there.
Sure.
What I mean, ultimately, I describe myself as a transhuman that will do anything to survive.
And say hello to Haley.
Will do.
And the baby, are you planning any more?
Not for the moment.
Yeah. I think this is when you start going grey and you don't sleep for 1,000 years and all that sort of stuff happens.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thanks very much, Michael. Good night.
Good night, Miles. Thank you very much. Bye.